Chapter 29. The Underground Lair. On and on, Joel walked for what seemed like miles. The glow of his watch was enough to light up the tunnels. He had grabbed one of Pandora's gas masks for safety, but this time it did not seem as if it was necessary. He kept it on just in case, although he appeared to be going in the same direction as he had gone when he and Rachel had their first adventure with Pandora. The end of the tunnel was nowhere in sight. He stopped and sat down for a moment to catch his breath. He began to feel lost.
God, how did we get here? How can a place like this even exist?
He began praying intently, clasping his hands together.
Lord, please help us get out of here safely and find Mom.
Just then, his phone somehow rang. When he answered, he could hear Davy's voice.
Joel, thank God that we reached you. Where are you?
Davy! Davy, I can't hear you. I'm stuck in these tunnels.
A crackling sound fizzled.
Davy? Davy?
Joel began to feel even more desperate as he got to his feet and tried to find a better signal. He tried to call Davy, Rachel, and the others, but no calls worked. However, the tunnels began to have a dull rumble, which made Joel stagger slightly. It soon stopped, and as he started moving ahead again, he noticed that the tunnel branched downward to the left. Near its opening, there was a sealed door that someone had left open. He was praying not to run into the serpent creature, the man with the twisted face, again. There was a dim light down there, so he decided to go that way. Soon, the slope included a set of steps winding down sharply. The steps blended in as if they were chiseled right out of the stone in ancient times. As soon as Joel thought it would lead nowhere, the steps leveled out and opened into a vast cavern. Several spacious rooms were elaborately decked out with columns that had intricate carvings. Pipes and wires began to string along the area, the same entangled maze that made up the other collider closer to the surface. Then Joel caught the source of the light. Another particle accelerator, only tripled in size. It had two circular beams connected to a new tunnel, even lower underground. It was not powered on, but something bright emanated from its center. Another towering, ornate mirror, nearly identical to the one in Rachel's picture from before. The top of this frame had a lion's face at the center and more ornate stones in its gilding. They likely used the mirror on the surface for testing, perhaps before using this more oversized mirror for their actual experiments. Slowly, Joel walked toward it. Its golden reflection was swirling with a bright light off in the distance, as if he was peering into another world. Before he got too close, he heard some people maneuvering around the cavern on the opposite side. Just as Joel hid away in the shadows, a brighter light invaded from above.
Hoist her up again, gentlemen. It is just off-center. It has to hang right in the center of the beam.
The man's voice made Joel jump, and he hid further away, out of sight. It was Dr. Crowning's assistant that he and Rachel had met when they first arrived at Prism. However, what was more surprising was the thing that they were hoisting up. Joel rubbed his eyes at the unbelievable sight.
Could it be?
He thought. There was no denying that it was right in front of him. The precious artifact for which his people, the whole world, had been searching for over 2,000 years. The Ark of the Covenant, the golden box that held Moses' 10 Commandments, Aaron's rod that budded, and the miraculous manna bread. That which had the very presence of God himself hovering over the golden cherubim, a miniature picture of heaven itself.
Wait, don't turn it that way. Watch it,
yelled the assistant. The ropes twisted and let the ark loose, bouncing it off a platform and crashing it to the ground from about 30 feet high. It landed just a few inches away from the mirror. Dozens of scientists in hard hats came rushing toward the site. The assistant was recovering from a near hit, as he was the one standing on the platform.
Fix it now! This needs to be done last century!
He lashed out at the workers. When they reached out to touch the ark, Joel winced, waiting for thunder and lightning to strike them all dead, as the ark did to Uzzah from the book of 2 Samuel. However, nothing happened. The workers handled the ark as they would handle an old couch. The golden cherubim had broken off, revealing a chalky center of plaster, a fake.
We cannot have this made of plaster, you cheapskates. The ark must be made of acacia wood and overlaid with pure gold. Since we cannot locate the original, people must believe this is the true ark. Even a baby can see that this is fake.
The man went on his rant, hitting the scrambling workers as Joel continued hiding.
Why do they need a fake ark?
Thought Joel. Then it occurred to him that they could never access the real one, but needed people to believe they had obtained it. He saw the assistant heading in his direction, but he stopped short before reaching Joel. The man's narrow, pale face was a true match to the rest of his emaciated body. Something about his movement was mechanical, almost fake. His black eyes narrowed as he reached toward a work table and examined what looked like a golden breastplate. It had several rows of various precious stones, but some were missing. They had a slight glow. Joel looked at the gemstones on his watch, which looked similar to those on the breastplate. He had been shielding them with his hand to cover their light. However, that was becoming almost impossible as his light grew brighter. The assistant seemed to sense his presence and began walking closer toward Joel. Just as he was about to be caught, the tunnel shook slightly again. The assistant turned around.
Did you hear that sound?
He smirked as he quickly faced the workers. Joel thought they had discovered him for sure.
Do you feel it?
He vigorously propelled his pointed finger downward.
The Master's army is mounting. Every day they grow stronger until the portal finally will open. They're attempting to push through as we speak.
Joel was relieved they had not discovered him, but was concerned with what the assistant was discussing.
They cannot come through until we fix this infernal machine.
Then he tried to calm his voice, but was not successful, as it sprung up into overly heightened plateaus to make up for any moment of downward turns.
The world is ready for this, people. Israel is surrounded by her enemies. However, human armies are not enough. We must bring back our heroes of old if we are to be successful in achieving complete domination. Our new world is upon us. Our hybrids have already awoken, but they are nothing compared to the ones from the ancient past. We have prepared a proper sacrifice for their complete awakening.
At this, the group began to cheer and chant.
Sacrifice?
Joel thought, feeling like he had walked in on the darkest cult he could imagine. Then Joel flashed back to the last night at their home in Indiana. That's where he first saw the assistant, but did not realize it until now. The report on TV about Prism that had shown the occult-like ceremony that their mom made them turn off. He was the man in the goat costume, there was no doubt about it, with his slender outline and shaggy beard. All that was missing were the horns and fur.
We have nearly gathered all of the stones,
said the man as he looked at the breastplate. Joel's watch grew brighter, and he knew he would have to flee soon or prepare to become another sacrifice.
We must hurry. Master Crowning is waiting. The daughter of Pandora has arrived. She will awaken those to come at the appointed moment.
Master Crowning? Pandora's daughter? Pandora didn't say anything about her arrival, and if it's true, how could he be willing to sacrifice her?
Joel had heard enough. He knew he would have to get Rachel and Pandora's daughter if she was willing and get them out of there. Also, he wondered if Davy had called about their mom. Had they found her? Joel was torn about which direction to go. However, just as he was about to slip back upstairs, the scientists had been preparing to test their equipment.
Clear!
Yelled the assistant. At his command, a switch ignited the large hadron colliders. Their circular patterns illuminated. The colliders pointed straight at the breastplate the assistant had left in the center of them next to the mirror. However, it was not clear. Joel was standing behind a wall just a few yards away. The stones on the breastplate lit up like a beacon. However, they seemed tarnished compared to Joel's stone. Sparks began spiraling out from the collider through the gemstones, energizing the particles at an unprecedented rate. Joel's primary sapphire on his watch also lit up, drawing him toward the breastplate like a moth to a flame. He cried out, trying to remove his watch. The assistant leaned forward in disbelief. Before he could intervene, there was lightning and peals of thunder. As soon as the lightning struck, Joel was sucked through the mirror. He was gone. At first, an icy frost turned into shards of ice surrounding him. Then it turned to darkness. Smoke and sulfur replaced the ice and engulfed him with an intense heat. He prayed fervently. Then, the light from Joel's watch seemed to shield him from the flames that encircled his body. He could feel that it was God's presence protecting him. Soon, it all began to vanish and fade away, and his watch cooled its light. Prayerfully, he opened his eyes and realized he was somewhere else. He quickly tugged the oxygen mask over his face, just in case the air was toxic. Through the disseminating fog, Joel walked forward. It was as if he was walking on a blank slate. Panic began to take hold, but after several yards of walking into nothing, he finally came to a door. It was a plain wooden door with 2 stars of David on it. Joel felt as if he had no other choice but to walk through. He twisted the knob and cautiously stepped on the other side. He was no longer in the tunnels, no longer imprisoned, possibly in another country or even another dimension. There was a narrow alleyway. Everything was dim, as if a permanent cloud had enveloped the sunlight. Several people with shabby clothing lined the alley, homeless. No one seemed to notice that Joel was there. They focused on their predicaments, attempting to stay warm underneath cardboard and blankets. Soon he came to a line of small makeshift huts made of something like plywood with a thin, rusty roof. He could hear a lady singing a gentle melody inside. There was no door, but Joel attempted to knock on the entryway. Joel noticed that the woman resembled Ishani, but she was much younger and had a friendlier look in her eyes. She was rocking her baby girl to sleep. Her voice seemed angelic with its soft, light tones contrasting against the darkness.
Blue lights, they twinkle and they shine. Pretty, beautiful blue. They twinkle and they shine, so happy, so divine. Blue lights keep shining all the time. Blue eyes, they twinkle and they shine. Pretty, beautiful blue. They twinkle and they shine, so happy, so divine. Blue eyes keep shining all the time. Blue lights, blue eyes, they twinkle and they shine. They twinkle and they shine, so happy, so divine. Blue eyes keep shining all the time.
As the woman ended her sweet melody, the baby girl reached for her mother's shiny bracelet. She was a toddler, perhaps a few years old. Other than her innocent eyes, the bracelet was the only thing that seemed to shine in this place. Her mother smiled, allowing her to take the bracelet with its charms. The whole time Joel was observing, neither noticed that he was there. Suddenly, a large man entered the room, instantly terrifying the mother. He reached for her baby and knocked the woman to the ground. The little girl scrambled under a table, but the man reached beneath it and grabbed her.
Stop! Stop!
Joel shouted, tearing the oxygen from his face. He mustered up his strength and charged at the large man, but Joel's body passed through him as if he were transparent. He desperately tried to help the mother and the baby, but his hands passed through both of them like he was a ghost.
You will die today, Annika.
The large man signaled other men to tie her up and light the hut on fire. Joel could do nothing. He watched helplessly as the woman screamed, and fire roared out of the doorway. The child echoed her screaming as the man dragged her away from her mother. He scuffed her little feet on the gravel and dust. Joel examined the little girl's face closely as he charged after them back down the alley. He caught a glimpse of her teary eyes and wrinkled up lips.
Rachel, is that you?
Joel could not believe he was seeing a toddler version of his fiancée. But he had seen the photos of her when she was little. There was no denying it. Then, the man stopped to open the door of his black vehicle, an older-style Mercedes that had picked up Joel and Rachel in Jerusalem with their parents. The man seemed to grin devilishly at him as he shoved Rachel into the car, the same driver who drove them to prison. Joel ran toward the car.
Rachel!
He collapsed as the car sped away on the dark street. Joel was left alone with fire, smoke, and panicked people running in all directions. Some ran right through his body, unaware of Joel's desperation. Unexpectedly, something prowled in the distance. Joel heard its low, familiar growl. The air became cool despite the burning building that was quickly spreading. Screams in the street grew louder. Ice began to form at Joel's feet. In the clearing, he could see him. The man with the twisted face looked right at him. Even though his face was still distorted, he somehow looked younger. Beside the man was a large creature, a giant with a distorted head, and it was ready to obey the man's command. With the flick of the man's finger, it started charging at Joel. He turned to run, looking for any weapon, but it was useless. His hands could touch nothing here. However, his stones began to glow again. Joel turned to run around the opposite side of the burning building, but the creature was too fast. Joel double-backed, and it roared in anger. When the creature was almost upon him again, Joel saw the man with the twisted face carrying Rachel's mother out of the burning building. She had passed out, and her body lay limp on his shoulder. Joel dodged another attack from the giant's massive fists. Suddenly, the building gave way and collapsed upon the giant. He cried out in torture, some of his gray, scaly skin turning into charcoal. Singed flesh and sulfur permeated the air. Joel's stones glowed so brightly that the light enveloped his whole body. Then at that moment, Joel was gone once again. Suddenly, he was warped into a new time and place and flung onto the ground. Joel lifted his face out of the dry brown sand. In the distance, he saw a deserted land with massive piles of dirt. 2 people were digging. They spoke in Hebrew, but Joel could understand.
How much longer, Abba?
Said a little voice. It was a small boy, about 8 years old. He looked a lot like Joel and Davy at that age.
Not long,
said his dad, digging deeper into the hole. They were both digging underneath an ancient brick foundation of an old homestead. Joel could tell they had been searching there many times since a tunnel was forming. Then the boy hit something with his small shovel.
Abba, look.
Let me see, Saul.
Saul proudly held up a large sapphire. His face was a miniature version of his portrait in the family mansion. Joel realized he was watching his grandfather and great-grandfather digging up the family jewels where they would eventually build the mansion. He could see the familiar landscape yet to be tamed, where they would plant the vineyard. This place was when and where it all started. Saul's Abba, Joel's namesake, proudly held up the sapphire beside a smaller one he had already located. He had already embedded the smaller sapphire within the hilt of a magnificent sword. This sun beamed through the brilliant blue colors of the gemstones. Joel Sr. mirrored the stern face of the older Saul. Joel looked at his watch and saw it held one of the same stones. Once again they began to shine brightly along with the other gemstones. The intensity of their glow momentarily blinded them. A man approached from behind Saul.
So, what have we found today? Any luck?
Saul shrunk back and his dad immediately became defensive.
I should not have to remind you that you are trespassing here. This is my family's homestead, and we have rights to our claim.
I have as much right to make a claim here as you do. You owe me your freedom.
I owe you nothing,
Saul's dad responded.
God intervened on behalf of me and what family I have left.
You betrayed us! I know that you are the one who reported us to the Nazis!
You did not even celebrate with us when liberation came. Just because the Nazis forced us to work together in physics during the war, it does not mean that you can trespass here. That life is over.
Have you become one of the Nazis?
He continued shouting.
Now that you have heard rumors of treasure on our homestead, you think you can just come here and...
The man spat right next to Saul on the ground.
I know you gifted 2 sapphires to the cat's family and 2 other gemstones to your illegitimate cousin. Those are mine. I am from the tribe of Dan, and they belong to me. Let me see what you have behind your back, son.
He reached toward young Saul and he recoiled. The man grabbed Saul around his waist, and Saul began kicking and screaming. His dad quickly intervened, striking the man with a blow to the head with the hilt of his sword. Blood trickled down his head, and he smiled in derision. His prominent cheekbones raised unnaturally high toward his furrowed eyebrows. Joel immediately recognized him. A young doctor crowning before the particle beam had struck him.
Thomas Katz is more of a friend, and has more talent than you could ever hope to have! What have you done to him?
Demanded Saul's dad. Joel now realized Dr. Crowning had plagued his and Pandora's families for at least 3 generations. How long could this guy survive? Suddenly, Dr. Crowning charged toward them, but the blinding light from the sapphires knocked him backward and his head hit a rock. He lay unconscious while Saul and his dad ran to get the authorities. The glow from Joel's sapphire and diamond stones began to envelop his body, and once again, he lapsed through other times and places in a whirl of light. His body felt stretched as if it might fly apart. Joel thought he might pass out at any moment. He grew nauseous while holding back the acid forming in the back of his throat. The force flung him into the future as he witnessed a flash of his own time streak past. Joel continued a few years ahead and landed in the heart of danger. Fire engulfed the area. He did not know his exact location, but somehow he knew it was the city of Babylon. Mangled bodies littered the streets in pools of blood. Alarms pierced Joel's ears, and the smell of death and smoke began to penetrate and burn Joel's lungs. Suddenly, great hailstones the size of refrigerators started falling from the sky, crushing cars and buildings before him. They began to crack and steam from the heat, mingling with the blood in the streets. Joel fell to the ground and began to choke. As a whirl of flames and hail nearly engulfed him, an invisible presence abruptly lifted him underneath his arms. He spun backwards, spiraling in a vortex of bright colors. He caught a glimpse of the same giant before attempting to pursue him through the portal. It lashed at him in a maddening rage with its charcoal teeth. However, Joel's stones radiated, and he surged back through the folds of time.